Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and when I'm not celebrating the founding of this nation by blowing up a small part of it, I'm here at the Wolfula reviewing movies. It's the 4th of July, so I figured, why not make another video about the film series that best represents our majestic nation's obsession with killing each other with a review of the Purge election year, the third film in the franchise written and directed by series creator James DeMonaco. Yeah, I pretty much only picked this movie because there's a guy dressed like Uncle Sam in it. I know what you're saying. There are plenty of movies I could have covered that actually have a 4th of July theme. And I know what you're also saying. We're not even in an election year. And yeah, okay, you got me. I look like even more of a fucking idiot now. I'm trying my best here, okay? Why don't you make these YouTube horror movie reviews yourself? You make it look so easy. Fuck. Anyway, here's my review of the Purge election year. But first, I have a message from my sponsor, me! Pledge to my Patreon today to support the channel, help it continue to grow, and you'll also get access to weekly movie nights every Sunday and archive commentaries if you miss the movie nights live. Just $5 a month to get a movie night every week. Pledge to patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula if you're interested, and I thank you in advance.
I put a lot of thought into it, as it'll be the last song you'll ever hear.
The Purge election year begins with a cold open involving a bloodied, terrified family terrorized by what is somehow the dumbest looking and sounding purger this series has had yet, wearing what looks like a mask with big googly eyes he threw together real quick after running by Joanne Fabrics.
We played a lot of Purge games tonight.
And he shares his Purge playlist with the family.
My Purge playlist.
Concluding with We Got the Funk by George Clinton.
George's psychedelic rock would leave you feeling funky, obviously.
It's like watching a shitty YouTube parody of the Purge movies. These films make hundreds of millions of dollars, but they still look like this. Anyway, this total goober makes the mom choose who survives tonight.
Mommy? Which one of you will survive this year's Purge?
And it's revealed 18 years later that it was her daughter, Charlene Roan, who goes into politics as a senator. Yeah, her mom probably should have let her die.
I have no doubt that the soul of our country is at stake.
And yeah, there's a 18-year time jump. Purge election year takes place in 2040. The original film and election year's flashback takes place in 2022. And the Purge Anarchy takes place in 2023. So there's a 17-year time gap between the second Purge movie and the third Purge movie. But you wouldn't really know it looking at it, and it leads to some serious confusion with one of the characters later on.
I don't think that's a good idea.
And yeah, these Purge movies take place in an alternate timeline, near future USA, but everything looks exactly the same. And I guess you might argue that says something about the world we're actually living in today. But, you know, in this version of the USA, where it's an annual tradition to cause nationwide chaos, you'd think it'd look a little more like a collapsing dystopia with a divergent cultural landscape, where only the rich communities aren't crumbling. You know, use some imagination for how the USA might change if the Purge was introduced into law, but no. In the first movie, there were at least attempts to try to make Ethan Hawke's house look kind of futuristic Jetson-y, but it looked really half-assed. So after that, they just stopped bothering with trying to create an interesting universe. Just have the Purgers wear goofy costumes that look like they belong in a Joel Schumacher Batman movie. That's enough.
The Purge is Halloween for adults!
Halloween is Halloween for adults, bro.
Senator Roan is proving to be the greatest threat to the NFFA regime since they first took office 25 years ago.
Anyway, the main story of the Purge election year is that nearly 20 years after a traumatic Purge experience, Charlene Roan is now running for president and intends to pass an executive order to outlaw the Purge. And she's neck and neck with her opponent, the new Founding Fathers candidate, Edwidge Owens.
Minister Edwidge Owens has been losing ground to wildcard independent candidate Senator Charlie Roan.
What kind of fucking name is Edwidge? Did his new founding father hate him or something?
Now, the stats are undeniable. There has been far less crime.
This is crap. Do I have to listen to this?
Now, elections are a big deal, but you know what's an even bigger deal? Teens shoplifting from bodegas. Honestly, a worse crime than anything committed on Purge night. Yes, even worse than that crime.
Give up the candy or I'll have to take it away from you.
You touch me, and I scream rape, you cocksucking pig.
It's at this bodega where all the characters besides the presidential candidate lady are introduced. You have Lainey, who was once a famous purger known as La Pequeña Muerte.
Now give back whatever you stole.
who now atones for her sins as an EMT active on Purge night. You have Marcos, who moved from Mexico to the USA, where murder is only legal for one night of the year, and he's an avid supporter of Senator Roan.
The senator's going to win. She's going to make real changes, too.
And finally, you have Joe, the salt-of-the-earth owner of the bodega.
Hope can lead to a lot of letdown.
And, you know, it's a Purge script, so the black guy is either going to be a stereotype or a symbolic martyr. And Joe takes a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B.
Boy, there's a whole bunch of Negroes coming right this way. And we sitting up here like a bucket of motherfucking chicken.
James DeMonico's motto writing these movies is, "It's not racist if I pay a black guy to say this dialogue."
My Negro.
Anyway, though, Joe discovers that his Purge insurance is too expensive this year.
They just raised the premium on my Purge coverage by thousands.
So he's forced to stay out on Purge night to defend his deli with a little help from his employee, Marcos. But fortunately for them, even though it's Purge night, it's pretty calm and peaceful. The streets are empty in every shot because even though these movies make hundreds of millions of dollars, they don't have the budgets to actually depict the chaos of what a Purge would look like if it was real. Instead, occasionally cutting away to vignettes of isolated scenarios where people are strapped to the hood of a car, or showing dudes fighting to the death with swords, or we find out some random visitors from various countries engage in murder tourism where they participate in the Purge while cosplaying as Uncle Sam or Abe Lincoln. God, so fucking stupid.
We're here to experience the Purge. To kill, be like Americans.
This is a Blumhouse movie after all. The hundreds of millions in profits made from these films can't actually go into the movies. The profits need to go into feeding Jason Blum's cocaine habit, and of course, his famous sex parties where, much like during the Purge, anything goes.
Is the cunt that close?
Speaking of anything goes, the 2040 Purge has no restrictions, which means political figures are fair game to kill. Now this is a Purge I can get used to.
The NFFA is revoking the Purge rule that protects government officials as ranking 10 on Purge night.
But the lifting of restrictions is just a transparent effort by the NFFA to legalize the assassination of Charlene Roan, so their candidate can run unopposed in 2 months. Yeah, for whatever reason, elections in the Purge universe happen in May. I don't know. Point is, Charlene Roan is very likely going to be assassinated, which would have been bad when it was illegal, but because the new founding fathers made it legal, suddenly nobody will think it's bad, I guess. Because Charlene has a huge target on her back, you'd think she'd go into hiding in a bunker or something, but that will show weakness to the voters, or whatever.
If the voters get wind that I'm hiding in a fortress like some rich asshole, I lose votes and the NFFA wins.
So instead, she spends the night at her home under the protection of half a dozen security guards when NFFA could totally just send a drone to legally blow up her house. This dumbass is running for president? Who the hell would vote for this fucking idiot?
The only way that I can win is to risk everything.
Luckily, though, Charlene is under the protection of Leo Barnes, played once again by Frank Grillo, a hard-boiled former LA police officer who's now the head of Charlene's security.
Not to leave her safe room. No one is to go inside her safe room. Do we understand each other?
Yes, this is the same Leo Barnes who was the protagonist of the second movie, which took place nearly 20 years earlier, but he hasn't aged at all. He's pushing 70 now. Good genes, I guess. I know Frank Grillo's looking good for his age, but they could have at least grayed him up a bit considering his character is old enough to be cashing social security checks. The fact that this movie doesn't really clarify the massive time jump from the second movie made it really confusing to me that Leo Barnes went from being an unemployed former cop to head of security for a presidential candidate, but apparently 20 years have passed and I don't. It's just so fucking clumsy. It's unfair to put thought into these movies when the writer didn't.
What made you apply for this position?
I like your politics.
Unfortunately for Leo and Charlene, the new founding fathers found themselves a crack team of crackhead white supremacists to take out the senator. Come on, Nazis storming Washington, D.C. to try to kill a senator? Like that would ever happen.
Sniper 2, radio check. Sniper 2.
The leader of the Nazis is revealed to be Anthony Michael Hall, and he finally gets a role where he doesn't have to cover his tattoos with makeup.
No payment unless we find her.
Leo and the senator manage to escape though, but they're on their own on the mean streets of DC, and meanwhile, Joe gets a visit to his store after hours, and it's so ridiculous watching these goofy-looking purgers arriving in the most impractical car ever on a completely empty street. Looks like a cheap music video. It's so stupid. They show CGI'd shots of the city on fire fire, and even isolated shots of shit like the Lincoln Memorial covered in dead bodies, though thankfully not at all tampered with in the middle of these riots. But when we actually have shots on the ground during the Purge, it's just empty streets. A closed set with slow-motion shots of dipshits dressed like edgy dipshits. Look at her mask. It says "kiss me," but you can't kiss her. The mask has no lips, just a sharp-toothed grin. It really makes you think.
I got a wicked sweet tooth tonight, and I want my candy bar.
Anyway, this chick wants the candy bar she tried to steal earlier, and she'll take it by any means necessary. So she gets run over by Laney's ambulance. And Leo and Charlene are saved by Joe and Marcos, who easily kill the attacking mob.
Come with us.
It's honestly funny at this point. The Purge films lean heavily into, well, the scary masked-up Purgers in their marketing. These flashily dressed killers. So you'd assume these Purgers would have a bigger role in the movies since they're on all the posters, but they're always just brief distractions while the main villains are just generic rich white assholes and faceless militias. I guess it says something about our society. You know, the world we live in today. The real evil in this world is kind of boring and exactly what you expect.
This is the American way.
And, you know, Leo ends up reluctantly teaming up with Joe, Marcos, and Laney to protect the senator and get her to safety. And it's kind of like a weirdly more optimistic, bland version of Escape from New York again, and a more boring version of the Purge Anarchy.
You know what, Mr. Secret Service man? You should be thanking my black ass for helping you instead of interrogating me.
Where Leo has to get through his trust issues to escort some ordinary people through the Purge again, but this time Leo has no interesting hook like in the second film. In that film, seeking revenge for the death of his son.
Took my boy, you took my boy, you took my fucking boy.
The closest thing to a motivation for Leo in election year is that he wants Charlene to become president to outlaw the Purge, so guys like him don't try to get revenge anymore.
I almost did something on Purge night that would have destroyed a lot of lives. I want this night gone.
But, you know, just because the Purge is illegal doesn't mean people aren't gonna still try to seek revenge and kill people. It's kind of a weak motivation.
Took my boy, you took my boy, you took my fucking boy.
You can see by this third flick, the Purge franchise is really played out, while still straining to fully execute its ideas. It's clear this premise needed a higher budget, but it's trapped at Blumhouse where, unless you're Jordan Peele, you're not getting a high budget. You do get a bit more of a political thriller angle with this one though, where Leo and Charlene uncover a plot by Edwin Hodges' recurring Purge character Dante Bishop to kill Charlene's political opponent, who's been trying to kill her, and she goes on a whole, we can't use the same tactics of our enemies. We need to win this election fair and square with the power of friendship.
I cannot have my presidency built on murder.
The characters in these Purge movies are either cartoonishly good or cartoonishly evil. It's nauseating. It's like I'm watching Captain Planet over here.
I know where they're taking her. I know why she's still alive.
To this film's credit, at least, it doesn't resort to the Deus Ex Machina bullshit of the first two Purge movies. When Charlene is abducted, she isn't suddenly, effortlessly, and miraculously saved just moments from death out of nowhere. Leo mounts a rescue mission we get to fully see. So, you know, that's something. An actually earned ending for once. And Charlene decides to spare her opponent, and she wins the election fair and square. Of course, the two black guys in the movie symbolically are sacrificed in the process as martyrs, but, you know, I'm sure Joe is running a wonderful new bodega up in heaven. Of course, with a woman in the White House now, there are NFFA supporters who are protesting her outlawing of the Purge. A violent uprising over the results of an election? Yeah, like that would ever happen.
Are reacting violently to this defeat. They are burning cars, breaking windows, looting.
The Purge election year isn't a bad movie. It's something you can watch and maybe get a reasonable level of entertainment. The writing, the acting, and the overall production aren't anything special, and in the writing's case, pretty fucking bad.
OG Queen Badass? Yo, you're my motherfucking hero.
But hey, there's some action in there that's kind of fun. You know, watching Frank Grillo fighting Nazis like this is an Indiana Jones movie, kind of neat. Election year is noted for being timely in its subject matter and even seemingly predicting things that have come to pass. But really, it's like The Simpsons. The Simpsons doesn't actually predict anything. It's a show that's been on the air a long time that's a satire of the USA.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
It's a show that understands the stupidity, the blind ignorance, and arrogance of the country it parodies, and a major part of its humor is trying to anticipate the dumbest things that could possibly happen based on stupid things that have happened in the past, and occasionally something that's a joke on the show will actually happen, because the world we live in is just as dumb or dumber than the world of The Simpsons. The same can be said with something like the Purge election year, to a lesser extent. I give the Purge election year a 49-year-old Frank Grillo out of a 66-year-old Frank Grillo. While I still have your attention, subscribe to the Gulag channel, which will be returning soon with a riff view of Scooby-Doo The Mystery Begins. And I'll be in that video too. Please subscribe, please.
I'm thinking about waffles and pussy. That's all I ever really think about, actually.
If you liked this video, like it, and if you loved it, click the subscribe and bell buttons for more vids. I'd also like to thank these fine folks pledged my shout-out tier on Patreon for all their kind support. Videos like this wouldn't be possible without all their help. Thank you for watching, see you next time. Dr. Wolfula signing out.